self-care can feel uncomfortable for a reason. It is not only because it asks you to do hard things. It is also because it shows you things about yourself that you may not want to see. Many people think self-care is soft and relaxing. They imagine slow mornings, candles, tea, or a quiet walk in the sun. And yes, sometimes self-care can look like that. But very often, real self-care feels different. It feels quiet in a way that makes your thoughts louder. It feels like sitting alone and noticing something important. You start to see that your stress is not only from your job or your schedule or other people. Sometimes it also comes from how you treat yourself every day. This is why self-care can feel uncomfortable. Because when you stop distracting yourself, you start to see more clearly. And sometimes, seeing is harder than doing. Many people think they are bad at self-care. They think they are lazy or not disciplined. But that is not always true. Sometimes, self-care feels hard because it removes noise. It takes away distractions. It creates a quiet moment. And in that quiet moment, you meet yourself. Not the version you show to others. Not the version that says, "I'm fine." But the tired version. The anxious version. The version that always says yes. The version that is always busy. The version that knows how to work, but not always how to feel. That is why real self-care can feel very different from what we see online. It is not always calm at first. Sometimes it shows you the truth. Sometimes it helps you see that what you called being strong was just trying to survive. Sometimes it shows that what you called being productive was actually fear. And sometimes it shows that what you called being easygoing was just ignoring your own needs. That is the interesting thing about self-care. Many people think it means doing more for yourself, but often, it starts with seeing more of yourself. And seeing is not always easy. Imagine this. Tonight, you decide not to scroll your phone. You sit quietly for 10 minutes before sleeping. It sounds simple, but when you do it, your mind becomes noisy. You remember things you have been avoiding. You feel how tired you are. You notice that you have been busy all day without thinking. Suddenly, your phone looks very attractive again. Not because you are weak, but because distraction helps you avoid these feelings. Or maybe you try journaling. You think it will feel peaceful. But instead, you write something honest. I feel lonely. I feel tired. I don't know what I want. I keep saying I'm okay, but I'm not. This is also self-care. Not because it feels good, but because it is honest. And honesty is a kind of care. There is another reason why self-care feels difficult. It asks you to care for a future version of yourself. A calmer you. A healthier you. A less tired you. But this is not easy. Because we like things that feel good now. We understand today's comfort more than tomorrow's peace. We want results quickly. But self-care works slowly. You go to bed early, but the next morning feels the same. You say no to something, but you still feel guilty. You eat better, but you still feel heavy. You take a walk, but your mind is still busy. This is where many people stop. They think, if it works, why do I still feel like this? But self-care is not a quick reward. It is something you build over time. It is like saving energy for your future. Think about this. Every time you choose to take care of yourself, you are helping a future version of you. The person who will feel less tired because you chose to sleep. The person who will feel less stressed because you finished something important. The person who will trust themselves more because you respected your limits. At the beginning, you may not see the result. You may still feel tired or confused. But slowly, something is changing. You are building a new habit. You are building a new relationship with yourself. Self-care is also connected to your identity. Every small action is like a vote. When you drink water, rest, or say no, you are saying, I care about myself. Not in a big dramatic way. In a small, quiet way. And that is enough. The problem is, many of these actions are not exciting. Nobody celebrates them. Nobody says good job when you go to bed early or leave a stressful conversation. But these are important moments. They are private. Only you know them. And that makes them harder but also more meaningful. There is also sadness in self-care, and people don't talk about this much. When you start caring for yourself, you may see your old habits more clearly. You may see how often you said yes when you wanted to say no. How often you pushed yourself too hard. How often you stayed in places that made you unhappy. This can feel painful, but it does not mean you are going backward. It means you are seeing clearly. And sometimes, before we heal, we need to see the truth. Let's look at a real example. Imagine someone who is always helping others. They always reply fast. They always say yes. People think they are kind and reliable. But inside they feel tired. One day, they decide to set a boundary. They reply later. They say, I can't help this time. This sounds small, but it feels very big inside. They feel guilty. They feel worried. They think, will people still like me? The difficult part is not the action. The difficult part is what it shows. It shows fear. It shows how they see themselves. This is why self-care can feel uncomfortable. It changes how you see yourself. Or think about someone who wants to rest but feels guilty when they rest. They sit down, but their mind says, you should be working. Why? Because maybe they believe their value comes from being busy. So resting feels wrong. Again, self-care is not only about the action. It is about what you believe inside. This is why self-care is not only about routines. It is about your relationship with yourself. Many people ask, what habit should I start? But maybe a better question is, how can I listen to myself more? Because if you only follow routines, it can become pressure. But if you build a relationship, it becomes understanding. You start to ask, what do I need right now? And that question is simple but also very brave. Being present with yourself is not easy. We live in a world full of distraction. There is always something to watch, to read, to scroll. It is easy to avoid silence. But in silence, you can hear your real feelings. That is why small actions can feel powerful. Going for a walk without music. Eating without your phone. Sitting quietly for a few minutes. Saying no when you feel tired. These things are simple, but they bring you back to yourself. And when you start coming back to yourself, something slowly changes. Self-care is no longer something you do. It becomes something you understand. Sleep becomes your body asking for help. Boundaries become your emotions asking for respect. Rest becomes your mind asking for safety. And when you listen, even a little, you start to trust yourself more. Not in a loud way, in a quiet way. You start to feel, I am here for myself. So maybe self-care is not always beautiful. Maybe it is not always relaxing or easy. Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like sadness before it feels like peace. But that does not mean it is wrong. It means it is real. If self-care feels hard for you right now, maybe that is not a bad sign. Maybe it means you are starting to see yourself more clearly. Maybe it means you are getting closer to yourself. And slowly, through small choices, you are becoming someone new. Not all at once. Not in a big way. But step by step. And one day, you may notice something has changed. The things that felt difficult before now feel natural. Boundaries feel easier. Rest feels safe. Honesty feels lighter. And taking care of yourself is no longer something you try to do sometimes. It becomes something you do every day quietly, like a promise to yourself. Have you ever wondered if a single sentence could quietly change the direction of your life? Sometimes it can. A teacher says, "You're not very talented." A friend jokes, "You're too quiet to lead." Someone in your family once tells you, "People like you don't succeed at things like that." At the moment, these sentences may seem small, but the human mind is powerful. When we hear something about ourselves many times, we slowly begin to believe it. And when we believe it, we start living as if it were true. Hi, my friend, and welcome back to the Heal and Grow podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something simple but deeply important: the labels we carry about ourselves, and why believing in your own potential is often more powerful than believing the opinions around you. In psychology, there is a concept called self-fulfilling prophecy. It means that when people believe something strongly enough, their actions slowly begin to make that belief come true. For example, imagine a student who believes, "I'm bad at math." Because of that belief, the student studies less. They avoid difficult problems. They feel nervous during tests. And slowly, their results become worse. Not because they were incapable, but because the belief shaped their behavior. The belief came first. The result came later. This happens to many people in life. Sometimes a label becomes a quiet script that guides the way we live. And here is something I truly want you to remember. Believe me, you are much more capable than you think. Many people stop too early. Not because they cannot do something, but because they believe they cannot. If you do not allow those inner limits and outside labels to stop you, you may discover abilities you never knew you had. If we look at history, many great achievements happened because someone refused to believe the limits others gave them. For example, more than 100 years ago, most people believed that humans could never fly. But two brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright, believed it was possible. They kept experimenting, and eventually they built the first airplane. Another example is the mobile phone. Many years ago, the idea that people could carry a phone in their pocket and talk to anyone in the world sounded impossible. Yet someone believed it could be done. And today it is a normal part of our lives. Your mind works in a similar way. When you truly believe in your potential, your brain begins to search for ways to make that belief real. Step by step, it looks for solutions, opportunities, and new paths. And one day, the things that once felt impossible may slowly become possible. I once knew someone who loved drawing when he was a child. He would spend hours sketching characters and landscapes. But one day a teacher casually told him, "You're not very talented at art." The teacher probably forgot about that sentence the next day, but the student didn't. Slowly, he stopped drawing. He told himself, "I'm just not a creative person." Years later, he said something that stayed with me. He said, "I don't know if I'm actually bad at art, or if I just stopped trying too early." Take a moment and think about this. How many things that other people said about you were completely true? In most cases, people are only sharing their opinions, their fears, or their own experiences. They say things like, "You can't do that," or "This is too hard for you." But those are only their thoughts. Believing those words or not is always your choice. If you accept every limiting belief that others give you, you slowly begin to build invisible walls around yourself. You may start thinking you are not capable, not smart enough, or not strong enough. But the truth is, you are much more capable than you think. Just look back at your own life for a moment. Think about the challenges you once believed were impossible. Yet somehow you moved through them. You learned new things, you became stronger, and little by little you found your way forward. Every difficulty helped you grow into the person you are today. So don't let other people's doubts become your limits. Remember this: you are still learning, still growing, and still capable of becoming far more than you can imagine. Sometimes the greatest loss in life is not failure. It is the possibility we never explored. And this is why labels can be dangerous. They are often just opinions at one moment in time. But when we repeat them in our minds for years, they begin to feel like facts. Society is full of these labels. People say extroverts are confident. Quiet people are shy. Successful people always have perfect grades. Smart people never fail. But real life is rarely that simple. Some quiet people are deep thinkers and strong leaders. Some students who struggled in school later build incredible careers. Some talents appear early. Others appear much later in life. Human potential does not follow a strict schedule. Sometimes it grows slowly, quietly, and unexpectedly. Think about it this way. A label is like a small box. Once we step inside that box, we stop exploring the rest of the room. But life is much bigger than that box. You are bigger than the label someone once gave you. And sometimes the first step toward freedom is simply asking one question. Is this belief really true about me? Or is it just something I believed for a long time? Maybe someone once told you, "You're too quiet. You're not confident. You're not talented." But those words were only opinions at a moment of time. They are not the final story of your life. The truth about who you are is still being written every single day. With every skill you learn, every challenge you face, and every time you try again, you are not a finished product. You are a work in progress. So if there is a label you have been carrying for many years, maybe today is a good moment to look at it again. Ask yourself, is this label helping me grow or quietly holding me back? If it is holding you back, you do not need to fight it. You can simply begin to step beyond it. Because believing in your potential is often the first step toward creating it. Today, I want you to pause for a moment and gently ask yourself one question. When was the last time you truly believed in yourself? Not just saying the words, but actually feeling it deep inside. For many people, that feeling doesn't disappear all at once, it fades slowly over time. Maybe you tried something and it didn't work out. Maybe someone made you feel like you weren't good enough. Maybe you looked at others and felt like you were falling behind. And little by little, something began to change. You started to doubt yourself. You questioned your abilities, your value, even your future. You stopped trying as much as you used to. You became more careful, more afraid, more quiet. And without even noticing it, you slowly stopped believing in yourself. But here is something very important to understand. You were not born without confidence. You learned to doubt yourself, and if something can be learned, it can also be unlearned. Because deep inside you, the ability to believe in yourself is still there. It has never disappeared. It is only covered by fear, by past experiences, and by negative thoughts, and today can be the moment you begin to uncover it again. You know, inside your mind there is a voice. It's quiet, but it's always there. Sometimes it tells you that you're not ready. Sometimes it whispers that you're not good enough. Sometimes it asks, what if you fail? And this voice can feel very real, almost like the truth. But it isn't always the truth. Most of the time, it's just a mix of past experiences, fears, and opinions that you accepted without even realizing it. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. It starts to shape your actions. You stop before you begin. You hesitate before you try. You choose safety instead of growth. But here's something important to remember. That voice is not your real self. It's just a pattern, and patterns can be changed. You don't have to fight it or make it disappear. You simply need to stop believing everything it says. You can hear it, but you don't have to follow it. And that is where your freedom begins. Now let's talk about the past. Many people carry their past with them every day. They remember their failures, their mistakes, their embarrassing moments, and they use those memories to define themselves. They say, I failed before, so I will fail again. I was not good enough then, so I am not good enough now. But this is not true. Your past is something you experienced. It is not who you are. Every person makes mistakes. Every person fails. But those moments do not decide your future unless you let them. Think about this. If you made a mistake yesterday, does that mean you must repeat it today? No, you can learn, you can grow, you can change. You are always becoming a new version of yourself. So instead of asking, what did I do wrong? Ask, what can I learn from this? Because the moment you change how you see your past, you quietly begin to shape a different future. And if you want to believe in yourself again, there is something you need to release. Not forcefully, not all at once, but gently. You need to let go of the old version of yourself, the one built from fear, doubt, and past experiences that no longer define who you are becoming. The version that is always afraid, always doubting, always holding back. Many people try to build a new life, but they are still holding on to their old identity. And this creates conflict. Because you cannot become someone new while still believing you are the old person. Letting go is not easy. It means you accept that the past is over. It means you stop repeating old stories about yourself. It means you give yourself permission to change. And this is powerful. Because the moment you say, I am not that person anymore, something shifts inside you. You create space for a new identity. A stronger, calmer, more confident version of you. And that version is waiting for you to step into it. Now let's talk about confidence. Many people think confidence comes first. They think they need to feel ready before they act. But in reality, confidence comes from action. It grows through small wins. Every time you do something you were afraid of, even something very small, you build trust in yourself. It can be simple. Speaking up in a conversation. Finishing a task you were avoiding. Starting something new. These small actions may not feel important, but they are the foundation of confidence. Because confidence is not about being perfect. It is about knowing that you can handle things, even when they are difficult. So don't wait to feel confident. Start small. Take one step, then another. And slowly, you will see yourself differently. There will be many moments when you don't feel ready. Moments when you feel afraid, unsure, or tired. And in those moments, you have a choice. You can stop or you can continue. The people who believe in themselves are not always confident. They just choose to keep going. They show up even when they don't feel perfect. They take action even when they feel fear. Because they understand something important. Growth does not happen in comfort. It happens when you step outside of it. So the next time you feel not ready, remember this. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to begin. And once you begin, everything starts to change. Believing in yourself is not about feeling strong all the time. It is about building trust with yourself. It is about knowing that you will show up, that you will try, that you will not give up easily. And this trust is built slowly, day by day, action by action. You don't need to rush. You don't need to become a completely different person overnight. You just need to keep moving forward. And one day, you will notice something different. You will speak with more confidence. You will act with more clarity. You will feel more calm inside. Not because life is perfect, but because you trust yourself. And that is the real goal. So if you are listening to this today, this is your reminder. You can believe in yourself again. Not because everything is easy, but because you are growing. And maybe, after everything we've talked about today, you can see this a little more clearly now. Believing in yourself was never about feeling strong all the time. It was never about being fearless, or always ready, or always confident. It's about something much quieter, but much deeper. It's about building trust with yourself. Trust that even when you hear that doubtful voice, you won't blindly follow it. Trust that even when you don't feel ready, you will still take a small step. Trust that even when things feel uncomfortable, you won't run away like you used to. And let me ask you something gently. Can you remember a moment, even a small one, when you didn't give up? When you kept going even though it was hard? That moment matters more than you think. Because this kind of trust is not built in one big decision, it's built slowly. Day by day, choice by choice, action by action. You don't need to rush. You don't need to suddenly become a completely different person tomorrow. All you need is to keep showing up just a little more than yesterday. And if you keep doing that, something will begin to change inside you. One day you'll notice it. The way you speak a little more confident. The way you act a little more certain. The way you feel a little more calm. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because you know deep inside that you can handle it. And that is the real goal, not perfection, not confidence all the time, but trust. Before we go further, let me ask you something. Everyone says, a small choice can change your whole life. But what does that actually mean? What is that small choice? Is it waking up earlier? Working harder? Being more disciplined? Or is it something much simpler than that? Because what if the choice that changes your life is not about doing more, but about stopping one thing you keep repeating every day. There is a quote I've been thinking about a lot lately. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And honestly, I didn't really understand this quote before. I thought it was about extreme situations, big mistakes, or dramatic life changes. But recently, I started to see it in a much quieter way. Not in big decisions, but in small, everyday choices. A while ago, I found myself in a place that looked completely fine from the outside. I had a stable path, a clear routine, and nothing was seriously wrong. But inside, there was a quiet feeling that kept coming back. Not loud, not urgent, just a small question appearing in random moments. Is this really the direction I want? I didn't have a clear answer. So like many people, I ignored it. I told myself I would think about it later when I had more time, when I felt more ready. But that later never really came, because my days kept filling themselves with the same choices. And that's when I realized something important. Your life is not shaped by what you think about once in a while. It is shaped by what you do every day without thinking. The small, repeated choices that feel too normal to question are the ones that quietly build your future. When you wake up and immediately check your phone, that is a choice. When you feel tired and decide to scroll instead of rest, that is a choice. When you postpone something meaningful because it feels uncomfortable, that is also a choice. None of these moments feel important, but when you repeat them every day, they become a pattern. And that pattern becomes your life. This is why many people feel stuck, even when nothing is obviously wrong. It is not because they are making terrible decisions. It is because they are making the same decisions over and over again. The same habits, the same reactions, the same way of spending time. And slowly, without realizing it, they create a life that feels predictable but not fulfilling. They keep hoping for change, but they are not creating the conditions for change. And this is where that quote becomes real. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, everyday way. Doing the same thing, and expecting a different result. For me, this became very clear when I started looking at my own choices. I was following a path that made sense, something stable and familiar. At the same time, I was creating content about personal growth, emotions, and living a more intentional life. It started as something small, something I did when I had time. But over time, I noticed a difference. On days when I chose to create, even just a little, I felt more connected to myself. Not more successful, not more productive, but more aligned. On days when I didn't, everything was still fine. But something felt slightly off. Not wrong, just not right. That contrast changed the way I saw things. I realized that the direction of your life is not decided by one big decision. It is decided by the small choices you repeat most often. And that is both uncomfortable and empowering. Uncomfortable, because it means you cannot blame everything on circumstances. But empowering, because it means you don't need to change everything at once. You only need to change what you repeat. The problem is, small choices don't feel powerful. They don't feel like progress. They don't give you immediate results. And because of that, we underestimate them. We think change has to be big, visible, and fast. But real change is quiet. It happens in moments that don't look important. It happens when you don't feel motivated. It happens when no one is watching. So what is that small choice? It's not a big action. It's not a perfect habit. It's the moment you pause and don't do what you always do. When you feel tired and instead of scrolling, you rest. When you want to delay something and instead, you start just a little. When you feel uncomfortable and instead of avoiding, you stay. That's it. That's the small choice. It looks simple, almost too simple. But it is powerful. Because it breaks the pattern. And once you break a pattern, even once, you create the possibility of a new one. And if you repeat that new choice, again and again, it becomes part of you. Think about it like this. Imagine you go to the gym for the first time. You spend 1 hour exercising. You feel tired, maybe even proud of yourself. But the next day, nothing looks different. No visible change. And this is where many people stop, because the effort feels real, but the result feels invisible. But something has already started. Your body is adapting. And if you continue day after day, there will be a moment when the change becomes visible. Not because of one workout, but because of many. Learning a language works in the same way. In the beginning, everything feels difficult. You listen, but you don't understand. Words sound too fast, sentences feel confusing, and sometimes you feel like you're not making any progress at all. You try to remember vocabulary, but you forget it quickly. And after a few days, it's easy to think, maybe this is not working for me. But something is happening even if you don't see it yet. Every time you listen, your brain is slowly getting familiar with the sounds. Every word you learn, even if you forget it later, is still building a foundation. And then, one day, something small changes. You start to recognize a few words in a sentence. You begin to catch simple phrases. You don't understand everything, but you can guess the meaning. And that moment feels different. Because suddenly, it's not just noise anymore. It starts to make sense. And from that point, everything becomes a little easier. You learn faster. You understand more. You feel more confident. Not because you changed everything overnight, but because you stayed long enough to build something underneath. Your life works in the same way. The small choices you make every day may not show results immediately. But beneath the surface, something is changing. Your mindset, your habits, your identity. And if you keep going, there will be a moment when you realize you are no longer the same person. Not because of one big decision, but because you stopped repeating the old ones. So if you feel stuck right now, don't look for a big solution. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just look at your next choice. And ask yourself, am I repeating my old self? Or choosing something slightly different? Because your life tomorrow is not built by what you hope for today. It is built by what you choose. Again and again, starting now. Yesterday, I noticed something interesting about my mind. I sent a message to a friend. It was a normal message, just a simple question. After some time, there was no reply. At first, I did not think much about it. But after a while, my mind started creating stories. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe they are upset with me. Maybe they do not want to talk to me anymore. Suddenly, a very small situation started to feel very big. Later that evening, my friend finally replied and said, "Sorry, I was busy all day." In that moment, I realized something important. The problem was never the message. The problem was the story my mind created around it. That is exactly how worry often works. In life, We often lose our calm because of very small things. Not because the situation is truly serious, but because of the story our mind creates around it. A small situation happens. For example, a message is not replied to. Someone gives a quick glance, or a comment sounds a little cold. By themselves, these things may be completely normal, but our mind quickly begins to interpret them. We start thinking, did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Maybe they do not like me anymore. And within a few minutes, a very small situation can become a very big story inside our mind. Our emotions begin to change and we start to feel anxious, uncomfortable, or restless. But when we look back later, we often realize that nothing was as serious as we imagined. The other person was simply busy, or maybe they were just tired, or they had not had time to reply yet. The interesting thing is this: the situation itself was small, but the story in our mind became very big. So sometimes what makes us tired is not life itself, but the thoughts we accidentally believe are true. Let me ask you a simple question. When a problem appears in your life, what do you usually practice first? Do you practice action, or do you practice worry? Most people believe worry is normal. They think worrying means they are being responsible. But if we observe carefully, worry is often just imagination repeating the same fear again and again. Your mind plays the same scene in different versions. What if something goes wrong? What if people judge me? What if I embarrass myself? Even though nothing has happened yet, your body reacts. Your heart beats faster. Your energy drops. All because of a story inside your mind. Here is the important part many people do not realize. Every time you repeat that mental pattern, you are training your brain. Just like learning a language. Just like practicing a sport. You are practicing worry. The brain learns through repetition. If you repeat fear often enough, your mind becomes very good at producing it. A small uncertainty appears, and immediately your brain creates the worst possible scenario. Not because you are weak, but because you trained it. But here is the empowering part. The same brain can also learn courage. Courage is also a practice. Not big heroic moments, but small decisions. Speaking even when your voice is not perfect. Trying something before you feel completely ready. Raising your hand when part of you wants to stay quiet. Each small action teaches your brain something powerful. I can handle discomfort. That is what a courage mindset really means. A courage mindset is not the absence of fear. It is the habit of moving forward even while fear is still present. Many people believe they need confidence before they act. But confidence almost never comes first. Confidence comes after experience. After you face something that once scared you. After you realize the situation was not as dangerous as your mind predicted. You act first. Confidence follows later. So the real question is not, why do I worry so much? A better question is, what am I practicing every day with my thoughts? Because whatever you practice long enough becomes part of your identity. Practice hesitation long enough and you become hesitant. Practice courage long enough and you become strong. And strength rarely appears suddenly. It grows quietly, one decision at a time. Many problems feel bigger in our minds than they are in reality. When we avoid them, the mind keeps replaying different scenarios. The longer we wait, the heavier the situation feels. But something interesting often happens the moment we act. The problem suddenly becomes smaller and clearer. Worry keeps problems inside your head, while action brings them into the real world where they can finally be understood and solved. So the next time you notice yourself worrying, try a simple rule. Pause for a moment and ask yourself one question. What is one small action I can take right now? Not the perfect action. Not the final solution. Just the next small step. Maybe it is sending the message you have been postponing. Maybe it is asking the question you are afraid to ask. Maybe it is opening the document and writing the first sentence. That small action does something powerful. It breaks the loop of worry. Your mind stops living inside imagination and returns to reality. And most of the time, reality is much calmer than the story inside your head. Here is another way to think about it. Worry is energy with nowhere to go. Action gives that energy direction. Instead of thinking in circles, you move forward. Instead of replaying possibilities, you test reality. And most of the time, reality is manageable. Not perfect, but manageable. That is enough. Because strength is not built in moments of certainty. It is built in moments when you move forward even while feeling unsure. Every small action teaches your brain a new lesson. I can move even when I feel uncertain. Over time, that lesson slowly becomes confidence. Confidence does not mean life suddenly becomes easy. It simply means you trust yourself to handle difficulty when it appears. That is the courage mindset. Not the absence of fear, but the habit of moving before fear grows too large. Before we finish today, remember this simple thought. Somewhere in your life right now, there may be a small thing you are postponing. A message you have not sent, a question you have not asked, or a step you have not taken. Your mind may be building a big story around it, but the reality is often much smaller than the story. So here is a quiet challenge for you. Sometime this week, take one small step toward the thing you have been worrying about. Not the perfect step, just the first one. Because very often the moment you begin, the fear starts to shrink. You can buy a gym membership, but you can't buy discipline. You can buy medicine, but you can't buy a truly healthy body. You can buy a beautiful house, but you can't buy the feeling of peace inside it. And if you think about it, some of the most important things in life are exactly like this. You can pay for the tools. You can pay for the environment, but you can't pay for the result that actually matters. So then, here's a quiet question. If these things cannot be bought, do we really have to earn them? Because a lot of people try. They try to earn peace by controlling everything. They try to earn health by pushing themselves harder. They try to earn love by being perfect. And yet, they still feel tired. Still feel restless. Still feel like something is missing. So maybe, just maybe, we've been looking at this the wrong way. What if a calm mind, a healthy body, and a loving home are not things you buy, and not even things you earn? What if they come from something much simpler than that? Think about your day. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the ground, your mind is already running. Notifications, messages, plans, pressure. In just a few minutes, your head is full. No one gave you that stress. You didn't buy it. But somehow, it's there. And if you look closely, it didn't come from your life. It came from your thinking. We often believe that a calm mind is something we have to achieve. We try to control our thoughts, fix them, replace them, improve them. But thoughts don't work like that. Thoughts are more like weather. They come and go. Some days are clear, some days are cloudy. You don't control the sky. But you don't have to chase every cloud either. A calm mind is not a mind without thoughts. It's a mind that doesn't believe every thought it hears. You can have a thought that says, I'm not good enough, or I'm behind, or I need to do more. But a thought is just a sentence in your head. It feels real, but it's not always true. And the moment you stop treating every thought like a fact, something shifts. A small space appears. That space is calm. You didn't earn it. You simply stopped disturbing it. Now think about your body. We've been taught that health comes from effort. More discipline, more training, stricter routines. Push harder. Try harder. And to be fair, this is not completely wrong. Because without effort, nothing really changes. If you never move your body, never pay attention to what you eat, never build any routine, health will not magically appear. So yes, effort matters. Discipline matters. Action matters. But here's where it becomes interesting. If effort alone was the answer, then everyone who pushes hard would be healthy. And that's not what we see. We see people who train intensely but get injured. People who follow strict diets but feel exhausted. People who stay disciplined for a while and then burn out. So the problem is not effort itself, but how we use effort. There are two kinds of effort. One comes from pressure. I have to fix myself. I'm not enough yet. I need to push harder. This kind of effort can work, but only for a short time because it is driven by tension, and tension cannot last forever. The other kind of effort comes from care. I want to take care of my body. I want to feel better. I want to support myself. This effort looks softer, but it lasts much longer. So maybe your body doesn't need extreme effort all the time, but it also doesn't mean doing nothing. It needs something in between. It needs consistency, it needs sleep, it needs simple food, it needs movement, not punishment. A healthy body is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you support every day, not perfectly, but steadily. Like a plant, you don't ignore it, but you also don't pull it to make it grow faster. You water it, you give it light, and you come back again and again. Health works the same way. It grows when effort becomes sustainable, when discipline becomes gentle, and when taking care of yourself no longer feels like a fight. And then there is something even more delicate. Not your body this time, but your relationships, your home. Many people believe that love comes from finding the right person, the right partner, the right environment, the right situation. And again, this is not completely wrong. The right person matters. The right environment matters. But if that were enough, then every perfect match would last forever. And that's not what we see. Even when people find the right person, things can still fall apart. Because love is not something you find once and keep forever. It's something you create every day. In how you listen, in how you speak, in how you react when things are not easy. A home does not feel warm because it is beautiful. It feels warm because of how people treat each other inside it. And just like your body, it's not about one big effort. It's about small things, repeated over time. And this is where everything becomes clear. These things, calm, health, love, are not things you can buy. But they are also not things you need to fight to earn. They are the natural result of how you live. There is a quiet paradox in life. The more you try to get something, the more you feel like you don't have it. The more you chase calm, the more restless you become. The more you chase happiness, the more you notice what's missing. And I didn't understand this before. I used to think I just needed to try harder, to fix myself, to become better, faster, stronger. But the more I pushed, the more tired I felt. Because deep down, when you chase something, you are telling yourself, I don't have it yet. And that feeling quietly grows. But something changed for me when I stopped asking, how do I get this? And started asking, how am I living right now? And that question is softer, but also more honest. Because maybe you don't need to add more. Maybe you need to remove what is unnecessary. The extra pressure, the constant comparison, the habit of believing every thought, the need to push yourself all the time. A calm mind appears when you stop following every thought. A healthy body appears when you treat your body with steady care, not extreme force. A loving home appears when you choose kindness, patience, and understanding in small daily moments. And here's something I wish someone told me earlier. You are not starting from zero. You have already felt calm before. You have already had days when your body felt light. You have already experienced real connection. These things are not far away. They are just covered by noise, by habits, by the way we rush through life. So maybe you don't need to rebuild your whole life. Maybe you just need to slow down enough to see what is already there. You don't need to become a perfect version of yourself. You just need to sleep a little earlier, move a little more gently, speak a little more softly, and stop believing every thought that passes through your mind. Small things, repeated quietly, really do change everything. And maybe the sentence we started with can be understood in a different way. The most important things in life cannot be bought, and they don't need to be earned through struggle. They come from the way you live each day. So take a breath. Really take one. You don't need to rush. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to live a little differently. And if you stay with that gently long enough, you might realize something very surprising. What you've been looking for was never really missing. It was just waiting for you to slow down and notice it. There is a moment when you stop and look at your life and quietly feel that something is missing. Not because you are not trying, not because you are not working hard, but because it seems like everyone else is already ahead. They have direction. They have success. They have something you are still looking for. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to believe that you are late. But maybe the truth is much simpler than that. Maybe your life is not late. It is just moving at a different pace. Like in the story of the tortoise and the hare, everything at the beginning made it look like the hare would win easily. He was faster, more confident, always ahead, while the tortoise was slow, quiet, and far behind. And if you only looked at the middle of the race, you would think the tortoise had no chance, that he was too slow, too late. But the story was never about who started fast. It was about who kept moving at the right pace. And in the end, the tortoise still reached the finish line. Not because he was better, but because he stayed consistent in his own rhythm. And maybe your life is the same. Maybe it does not matter how fast others are moving. What matters is that you keep going, step by step, at your own pace. Because moving slowly does not mean you are falling behind. It simply means you are growing in a different way. And you can see this clearly in nature. Some of the most beautiful flowers bloom at completely different times. Cherry blossoms appear early in spring, soft and brief, blooming only for a short moment when the weather is still cool. Sunflowers come later in summer, growing tall under strong sunlight, taking time to reach their full height before they open wide and bright. And chrysanthemums bloom even later, in autumn, when the air becomes cooler again, quietly opening when many other flowers have already faded. Flowers do not compare themselves to other flowers. They just bloom. And the reason they bloom at different times is not because one is faster or better than the others, but because each flower depends on different conditions, temperature, sunlight, environment. Each one has its own natural timing written into its growth. And in the same way, your life also depends on many invisible conditions. Your experiences, your struggles, your learning, your environment, all shaping your path in ways you may not fully see yet. So just because your moment has not arrived does not mean it will not come. It simply means you are still growing, quietly, in your own season. And if you look closely at real life, you will see this everywhere. Some people succeed early, but later in life, they lose everything and have to start again. Some people feel lost in their 20s, but slowly build something strong and meaningful in their 40s or 50s. Some people get married very young, but realize they were not ready. And some people take more time, find the right person later, and stay together for the rest of their lives. And when you see these stories side by side, something becomes very clear. There is no single timeline that works for everyone. We look at someone's success, but we do not see their timeline. We only see the result, not the years of waiting, trying, and starting over. So when you feel like you are behind, remember this. Life does not follow one schedule. It unfolds in many different ways. Some people arrive early. Some arrive later. But that does not make one life better than another. It simply means each life has its own timing. And maybe the hardest part is not being behind, but not knowing where you are going. There is a quiet kind of confusion that many people carry every day. You wake up, you go through your routine, you do what you are supposed to do, but deep inside, something feels unclear. You are trying, but you are not sure if you are trying the right thing. You are moving, but you do not know if you are moving in the right direction. And that feeling can be exhausting. Sometimes it feels like everyone else has a map. They know where they are going. They have a clear goal, a clear plan, a clear future. And you look at your own life and all you see are questions. What should I do? What am I good at? What is the right path for me? And the more you think about it, the more lost you feel, and maybe you have tried many things already. Maybe you started something with hope, but it did not work out. Maybe you changed directions more than once. Maybe you felt excited in the beginning, but then slowly lost motivation. And now you are not just confused, you are also tired. Tired of starting again. Tired of not knowing. Tired of feeling like you should have figured it out by now. But here is something I want you to hear very clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. Feeling lost does not mean you are failing. It means you are searching. And searching is not a waste of time. It is part of the process. In fact, many people who eventually find a meaningful path do not find it quickly. They go through uncertainty. They try things that do not work. They take wrong turns. And for a long time, their life does not look impressive from the outside. But inside, something important is happening. They are learning. They are discovering what they like, what they do not like, what matters to them, and what does not. And this kind of learning cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It only comes through experience, through time, through living. So if you feel like you are still trying to figure things out, you are not alone. You are not behind. You are in the middle of becoming. And even if it feels slow, even if it feels unclear, even if it feels frustrating, it is still progress. Quiet progress. Invisible progress. But real progress. And maybe one day you will look back at this time in your life. This confusing, uncertain, uncomfortable time. And you will realize it was not wasted. It was preparing you. It was shaping you. It was guiding you, step by step, to a path that truly belongs to you. So take a deep breath and be a little kinder to yourself today. You do not need to have everything figured out right now. You do not need to move as fast as others. What matters is that you keep going, gently, honestly, at your own pace. Trust that your life is unfolding in ways you may not fully understand yet. Trust that the time you spend learning, trying, and even struggling is not wasted. It is building something inside you. And one day, it will all make sense. One day, you will arrive. Not because you rushed, but because you stayed, you tried, and you believed.